What's going on YouTube? West Hobbies RC. So today we're back with part 3 of the Spitfire converted to a Reno racer build. So we're going to start with the wings, and we are going to go through with some Bob Smith 2-ounce thin CA. And I'm going to go through and take this thin CA and go through every joint on the wing. I want to go through every rib, every glue joint that they did. I want to redo, just to make sure that the wing is glued together strong, because a lot of these ribs are loose and there's a lot of areas that are not glued properly. So I do this on all ARF builds. Regardless if it's covered or not, I will take my thin CA, and usually I'll hold the wing straight up and I'll pour it down into the wing here and down through anywhere I can get it into. I'll take the servo covers out and I'll get some thin CA soaked all around there. I call it zap dripping. It's a trick I learned a few years ago from a buddy of mine. We both used to build really fast ARFs, so something that will make your wing much stronger and you can feel the wing get stronger. It's a little tip that I do. So we're going to go ahead and get started with re-gluing all the joints, and then once we're done with that, we're going to shear web all the way down, and then we are going to do the wheel wells. I'm going to fill these in, balsa in the inside, balsa in here, and they will be balsa filled in wheel wells. We'll go ahead and paint it black, just because I could put the plastic covers that it comes with in and glue those in place, but I would rather just build some nice balsa ones in there, get some min wax to seal the wood, paint it black. It'll be done. I don't have to worry about the plastic breaking and coming loose over time, and just what I prefer over plastic wheel wells. We're going to also paint. We're going to seal inside of the flat first with some min wax, and then we're going to paint those black as well. It's going to be an electric model, so I know technically you don't have to do it. You just paint it, but it looks better when you coat it with min wax and paint it. Gives it a smoother, nicer finish. So we're going to go ahead, set the time lapse up. We're going to go through, re-glue all these joints, get these wings ready to be covered, and then we can start on the fuselage. So we're going to cut to the time lapse now. We're basically just taking Bob Smith thin CA and we're soaking it into every joint, wicking it to glue all the ribs and sheeting to make it strong again. Okay, so we went ahead and re-glued all the ribs and soaked some thin CA down inside the wing everywhere we could. So I'm happy with that. Now everything's nice and solid. So we're going to go ahead and start with the wheel wells. So basically what I'm doing here is I ended up having to trim just some of this little excess around here just so it would be flush all the way around. So I went ahead and cut some balsa and soaked it in soapy water, which is just water with a little Dawn dish soap. But I like to soak it for a few minutes, and it allows the balsa to become pliable where you can form it. If you try to do this when the balsa is dry, it will just snap. So you can soak it, and if you're trying to get a perfect round, you can wrap it around a pipe or something round like a bottle, and you can rubber band it, let it dry, and when it dries, it'll hold that perfect shape. But because we're going around the wheel well, we'll be able to just force down in there, glue it into place, something along like this. So I cut 2 small ones, and it'll be the same, and these should fit in the front side here. We're going to have to trim them up, but they're going to go something like this. And we'll go ahead, push them down flush, trim them as needed. I cut them long so they would be really long, and we cut them off later, but we'll go ahead and push these down into here. One will be like that, and then we'll take our other longer one we got here. We'll go ahead and match it up to this one. I'm going to glue these 2 together first and then form it in, and then after it dries we'll come back along with an X-Acto knife and we'll cut it flush. But that is going to be the plan of the wheel well. So I'm going to go ahead and get that done, trim them flush, and then we'll see what it looks like. Alright, so the wheel wells are done. We just filled them in with balsa as I showed in the last clip, wet it. We still have to do a little final sanding over here. I ended up cutting, this doesn't look the best, but I'll fill this in with some wood filler before we cover. But this used to be a cutout here for apparently a different kind of strut. I don't know, but the struts that come with don't need it, so there's no point in having it. So I filled it in. We have a Retract just sitting in place. This one looks much better. Same thing here. It had a cutout here for a strut, I guess, that had something. I don't know, but it doesn't need it, so there's no point in having it. So I used, as you guys with helicopters will know, this stuff here. Get the camera to focus on it. If you watch my helicopter videos, you'll know that I love this stuff. It's a fabric paint. I use it on all the connections going into the FBL. It's like a rubbery paint that dries pretty hard, but it can peel back off. So I used it to seal around the bottom. Got to do another coat of it, but that'll just seal the wheel well in. I've got to do it over here as well. But we have the Retract sitting in place now. So we have the Retract in. We have to adjust it for straightness and up and down. But as the Retract retracts, let's get these are the gear door holders. One thing I'm not very happy with is how high the strut itself sits out of the wing. Not happy at all with that. So when you put the door on, it's going to stick up even more and it's going to look really weird. So what I'm thinking to do is, they have these little spacer blocks here. So I'm thinking about cutting these spacer blocks out, which will lower the Retract down. Hopefully it lowers it down enough where the strut will completely go inside of the wing, because that just looks terrible. Now if I space the Retract out, it'll go. But then if you do that, when the gear retracts up, it will sit, oh, hold on, lock it in place. But then the gear will sit like that when it's fully locked down. So I don't know. I have to figure that out, but that's another step. But for now, the wheel wells are done. We just got to do a little filling, sand them out. So next we are going to grab some 1/8 balsa, which we got here, and we are going to start the shear web. So we're going to go in and shear web in between each bay. So we're going to cut to the time lapse of that, and we'll come back when we're done with the shear webbing. So we're shear webbing the wing here. With shear webbing, you want to make sure that the grain goes vertically in between each bay. That will give you the strongest joint as you are basically boxing in the actual main spars, top and bottom. So we just go ahead and get all between each rib bay done. Mainly we go from the wing tube out. There's no point really in putting any on the two first bays. So the wing will be much stronger now. Okay, so now shear webbing is done. Just going to be on the inside of the wing, through all the bays, on both sides, all the way to the wingtip. I left these middle bays open and just did from the tube out, since that's going to be the most important part, and from that rib to this rib here is a tube, so no need really for the shear webbing in there. So I just did from the wing tube to the tip. So I also got the wheel wells finished up, filled in as you've seen. Now I started messing with the retracts. So as you can see here, the strut sticks out a good bit out of the wing. It is flush here. They added filler blocks and flushed the retract block itself to the top of the wing. So when the retract sits down in here, and it'll be screwed down, it's gonna sit like that. So it's going to sit out pretty high. Then you put the gear doors on, and you can figure with the retract screwed all the way down, the doors are going to stick out about a ½ inch. It's going to look pretty weird with the doors sticking way out here. So I was not happy with that at all. So I started on one already. I took the top layer of the blocks out, the exact thickness of the retract. And that allows for the retract to sit all the way flush with the balsa and the sheeting. And now that allows, let's rotate these gear blocks, which probably are not going to use, but that now allows the strut to sit pretty level almost inside the wing. We'll have to space the back of the retract out a little bit, but that will allow the strut to go completely inside of the wing and about as far as we can go without the axle hitting the sheeting. Now the doors are still going to stick out a little bit, actually a lot. So I haven't figured out what we're going to do with the door mounting yet. I'm probably not going to use these because I really don't want the gear doors sticking out that far. It just looks really weird. I'll figure something out. So that's where we're at so far. I'm gonna go ahead and get this one done now to match. And then we can start min-waxing the wheel wells inside of those and the flap wells, and then paint those and the wing will be done. We decided not to clip the wing, so we're not gonna do nothing with the tips. And then the wing will be done, ready for covering. Then we'll move on to the fuselage. All right, so we got the other retract cut lowered. They're both the same now, it's just not in. So I'm gonna take some of this min-wax, or it's like min-wax, but epoxy brush. Now I've used this stain a lot, so it's multicolored. It's not completely clear like it's supposed to be, but it's interior, it's semi-gloss. This is what I like to do. So I just dip my brush down, and I like to go through the wood and just brush it on. And I'll go through the entire flap surface. Now, I used to do this on all my nitro airplanes, but this is gonna be electric, but I still do it like this first. So I just go through, seal everything, brush it on, let it dry, and then I will come back and paint it all black. This will give us a nice look. All the wood is sealed, even though really, technically, it doesn't have to be because this is an electric aircraft. But still, old habits on the way I build. I go the extra mile, and it will never get ruined. I also, if this was nitro, I will use an epoxy a lot of times instead of this. But since it's electric, we can just go through, we can seal everything up. And when we paint it black, the wood will be sealed. It'll have a nice black look to it. We'll do the same for the wheel wells. So I'm gonna go ahead and do this and be back when we're ready to paint. Let's go ahead and brush. All right, so I went ahead and got the motor mounted. Got the cowling put in place where it's gonna go. As you can see, there's a cutout that goes flush with the wing bulkhead that goes down there. But as you can see, it sticks out about a ½ inch too far. So I took my, now this is with any nitro, electric, doesn't matter. When you go to set your cowling on a usually for nitro, what I do is I put the cowling on where it goes, stick my ruler down inside till it hits the firewall. That'll give me a measurement, and then I can set my back plate of my motor accordingly. I just used the stock motor mount that came with this. So from the back plate, we need to take off a ½ inch off the standoffs, and that will allow our back of our prop adapter to slide back far enough where we can still have a little adjustment if need be, pull out, you know, to make it perfect. But let's go ahead and pull this cowling off here. Sorry, this is very hard to do with one hand. So cowling aside, as we can see, we're just running the standard standoffs. We got the Power 60 mounted. We are not using this prop adapter. I have a bolt-on coming, but it's the exact same dimension from the back plate to here, so we are good with that. So we're gonna have to take off a ½ inch off these standoffs. They're plastic. We'll just measure a ½ inch, chop them. We'll probably have to get shorter bolts. We did have to put the blind nuts in, which as you can probably see through here. Blind nuts down inside of there. I put medium CA on them to hold them in place so they can't come back out. No Loctite or nothing is done yet. So we are gonna go ahead and cut the standoffs off, get the motor mounted where need be on the wing itself. We got everything dried, so now we can go ahead and tape off the wing, paint the flap bays, sorry I can't speak, and the wheel wells black. And then the wing will be done and ready to be final sanded and covered. And then once we get the standoffs cut and the motor moved back to where I'm happy with the cowling, we'll go ahead and get some hardwood blocks put in, because there is no hardwood inside the fuselage. So if we just go ahead and run our screws into the balsa like I explained in the first video, it's just gonna pull the screws out eventually. So I always put hardwood blocks in. No such thing as overbuilding. I like to build airplanes to last. And they usually last forever unless something fails and I crash them anyway, so it really don't matter. But we're gonna go ahead, cut the standoffs off, get the motor moved back. We're gonna get the flap and wheel wells painted black, and we'll come back. All right, so I'm Loctiting, final mounting the motor. I ended up having to cut the standoffs down ½ inch. cut those down. I ended up having to cut the bolts down as well. So they are cut down. There's just enough perfect amount of thread that goes all the way through the blind nut. So we are good there. But I figured I would touch on this real quick. So final mounting the motor. There is, hold on 1 second. All right, there's a lock washer right here. You see it's a split washer. And when you tighten this down, it goes flat, and that's how it's, you know, working and locking down. So I figured I would show you this. So we're going to take our Loctite, and I like to put a bead all the way through. Try to do this one-handed. We're going to tighten this down. Let's see if I can get this to where. All right. This is not cooperating with me. Hold on 1 second. Okay, there we go. Now, all right, so we're gonna tighten this screw down until the washer flattens completely. And that's how we know that we got it tight enough. Washer is completely flat. I like to crank it down. Now, that washer is completely flat on all 4 screws, and it is now locked down and doing its job. Completely flat on all 4 screws. So make sure whenever you're tightening down screws with lock washers that you tighten them till they come completely flat. Now with the lock washer, you technically don't need Loctite, but I still like to have Loctite anyways. It's a safety precaution. So now I'm gonna go ahead and get the standoffs and all the washers put back into place. This camera will focus, here we go. So now we'll get those standoffs put back, get the motor mounted, and the motor part will be completely done. All right, motor is completely done. Standoffs cut, mounted, Loctited. All of the lock washers are flattened, tightened perfectly. The motor does not have to come back off even while we're covering. Now we still have to put cowling blocks in, but I'm waiting on the new prop adapter to get here so I can mount the spinner and get the cowling perfect. And the wing bays are painted. Flat bays, retract bay wells, wheel wells, filled in, all balsa, no plastic to break apart. So now we start to cover the airplane. Got to do a quick sand, which I'll do on some little areas, but then start the covering job. And we got to take this ugly pilot out, put something else in that looks much better. But this will be it for part 3. Part 4, we're going to start the covering, and we'll start with the wing first. Get the wing all covered in the aluminum, and then we'll start with the fuselage and get the black trim and all that added in the green and all that fun stuff. So I'm going to end it off here. Thank you guys so much for watching. Take care and have a great day.